My brother has always hated me. He once told me outright that it would be better if I were dead, so, as he wished, I developed stomach cancer, but then he regretted it. Still, I died. With a smile, I passed away right in front of him. When Jack called, I had just gotten home. The diagnosis in my bag was crumpled into a ball. He had never called me first before. It was Dad's birthday the day before yesterday. His voice was cold, as if frosted over. It always was. Why didn't you come back? Because I didn't want to. I cut him off. You could have gone back. Jennifer even came back from abroad. Jennifer is our cousin, who had lived with us since she was a child. She was there. That should be enough, since you only see her as a sister anyway. The person on the other end seemed to flare up in anger, calling my name in a low voice. Julia. I pressed the end call button. The last traces of twilight fell into the room. I sat at the table and tore the diagnosis into shreds. As the pieces fluttered onto the table, suddenly, my phone screen lit up. Jack, Mom's anniversary is coming up soon. Jack is my brother. He has always hated me, because I am the culprit who took his mother from him over 20 years ago. My mother died in childbirth as I was born. It was a murder disguised as a birth. No one welcomed my arrival. Because of me, Dad lost the wife he loved most, and Jack. He lost his mother. This long-standing hatred began the day I was born and has persisted ever since. I didn't deliberately miss Dad's birthday. That day, I was in so much pain I nearly passed out before I realized something was wrong, but perhaps my absence made him more comfortable. Jack didn't contact me again. Standing outside the company building, I took a deep breath. After graduation, I joined his company, working my way up from the bottom. No one ever discovered our relationship. The number of times I saw him was even less than the times he met with ordinary employees. Last week, a senior executive resigned, and this Monday, the successor was to be announced. Everyone said the position was undoubtedly mine. At least, that's what I thought until I received the diagnosis. As I walked down the hallway, a colleague greeted me and came up to me with a smile. Julia, don't forget to treat us to a big meal when you get promoted. I smiled wryly. It's not certain yet. It has to be you. She looped her arm through mine. Out of everyone here, you're the best. When I entered the conference room, Jack was there too, and our eyes met for a moment before I looked away, like strangers. Good morning, Mr. Jack. He didn't look at me, just nodded, indifferent as if we never had that argument the other night. As the people in the meeting room gradually assembled, Jack cleared his throat, and my colleague winked at me. I looked down to avoid her gaze. The next second, I heard a familiar name. Jennifer. A familiar figure entered from the door, slender and graceful. Jennifer's smile as gentle as ever. Jack stood by her side, introducing her to everyone. Miss Jennifer just returned from abroad. Jennifer was set to take over as the assistant manager. People instinctively looked at me. I shifted my gaze away, focusing on Jennifer's radiant smile on the stage. For a moment, the atmosphere seemed to freeze. Unseen currents stirring beneath the surface. I managed a smile and clapped my hands. The sparse applause broke the slightly eerie atmosphere in the meeting room. Jennifer caught my eye, her expression warm and friendly. The coffee aroma in the break room was so strong, it felt as if it was spilling out. I stirred it with a spoon, took a sip, and felt the acidity reflux as it went down. My colleague glared, visibly upset. Why does she get your position just by parachuting in? Is nepotism really that blatant? Julia, aren't you angry? That position was meant for you. You've worked so hard, you almost ended up in the hospital last time from overworking. She looked at the bags under my eyes. Julia, no offense, but you don't need to push yourself so hard. Cut down on the coffee. The warmth of the coffee seeped through the ceramic mug into my hands. I whispered thanks. Mr. Jack must have his reasons. The girl was about to complain in a lowered voice when a phone rang abruptly. Jack's voice was unmistakably clear in the cramped room, carrying an undertone of suppressed anger. Julia, come to my office. The cup in my hand trembled, spilling a few drops of coffee onto my white shirt, the heat scalding my skin through the fabric. I responded softly, okay. As soon as Jack's office door opened, I saw Jennifer sitting on the sofa, her head slightly bowed, clutching a sheet of paper, and there sat Jack, his face stern, suppressing his anger. People used to say that although Jack and I came from the same mold, Only our eyes looked alike, upturned at the corners, naturally exuding a cold, unwelcoming air when not smiling. Unfortunately, neither of us liked to smile, and Jack had never smiled at me, even though Jennifer was a direct appointment. She is qualified, Julia. He called my name, his brows furrowed. If you have grievances, speak them out loud, gossiping behind people's backs and isolating Jennifer with other colleagues. Julia, is your malice bone deep? In just half a day, I glanced sideways at Jennifer. She looked up, meeting my gaze. Her youthful face was full of collagen, her eyes slightly red and teary, reflecting the fragmented light before she quickly looked down again. The stage was set for a farce, waiting for me to continue, but I truly had no interest in playing along. People can say whatever they want, how does it concern me? And besides, people aren't fools. The sound of sobbing mixed with something hitting the floor. The expensive pen that had been on the table was now in pieces. Black ink spread at my feet. Julia, you. A light sheet of paper fluttered onto his desk. Jack was cut off mid-sentence as he read the words on it, his anger flaring up again. Julia, are you still a child? Are you throwing a tantrum? The brand new resignation letter was crumpled into a ball by him, tossed at my feet like trash. It wasn't a tantrum. I had known for a long time. I had no right to throw tantrums. Only children who are coddled have that privilege, and I wasn't. I'll handle it with HR myself. As I closed the door, his shouting was also shut inside. I hadn't gone far when Jennifer caught up to me. Julia, her voice still carried a hint of nasality as she cautiously reached out to hold my hand. Julia, don't be upset. I don't want this position. I'll talk to Jack. Please don't hold a grudge. I wish I had never come back. Julia, don't let my presence ruin the sibling harmony between you and Jack. The hallway was empty. I stopped in my tracks and looked at her. Jennifer's eyes, naturally imbued with innocence and a pitiable charm, along with her slightly reddened eyes and nose, always made it easy for her to gain favor from others. It was just like when she first arrived at my home. Over a decade ago, Jennifer. I took a step closer to her and grasped her chin. This act, it never fails, does it? Does it? Jennifer's face turned pale in an instant. The sound of the elevator arriving chimed. I let go and walked into the elevator, while she seemed still dazed, standing still. I looked back at her with a smile. You know very well, Jack and I never had any sibling affection. In fact, you've always been more like his sister. As the elevator doors closed, I saw my own expressionless face reflected on them. A pang of pain twisted in my stomach. Initially, my relationship with Jack wasn't this strained. As a child, although he didn't like me much, he never did anything too harsh or said anything too mean. Compared to my father, who treated me as if I were invisible, Jack was the only family member I felt close to. I thought, even if Jack didn't like me, we were still family. That's what blood relations meant, until middle school. When Jennifer came to our home, I then realized, my brother could indeed be nice to someone else. He wouldn't always be cold-faced, wouldn't tell her to get lost, nor mock her sarcastically. That was the true attitude a brother should have towards a sister. But Jennifer was never satisfied. On my 5th day at middle school, when I came home, Jack slapped me hard across the face, holding my cheek. I stared at him in shock as he muttered words I couldn't understand, malicious apologies. But then I saw Jennifer behind him, head bowed, clutching at his shirt. These fragmented words suddenly pieced together into a complete lie in my mind. I argued, but he didn't believe me. The argument that day and his obvious favoritism suddenly shattered my once naive and foolish notions. Jack wasn't foolish enough to not distinguish right from wrong. It was simply intentional. It seemed I only realized after that day. My brother truly harbored genuine hatred towards me. My relationship with Jack rapidly deteriorated. Naive and childish as I was, I thought, rather than treating me as a stranger like my father, it was better to confront him. At least, Jack would see me. Our strained relationship continued until I was 18. The year I turned 18, I was dragged into hell. After that, my relationship with Jack suddenly turned cold, as if we were strangers, like a abruptly ceased war. We no longer argued, no longer hysterical, no longer confrontational, just cold. As if we didn't know each other. After finishing the procedures and returning home, The sky outside had already turned completely dark, the street lamps in the neighborhood hadn't come on yet, and all I could see was the warm yellow light seeping out from the homes across the way. The stomach pain had persisted since the afternoon. Curled up on the sofa, hunger and pain spreading throughout my body. I struggled to get up and open the refrigerator. A nauseating stench of rot hit me as I opened it. And I suddenly remembered that it had been over a month since I last did. I grabbed a handful of greens, rinsed them briefly, and placed them on the cutting board. The sound of the knife chopping was uneven. Bright red blood dripped onto the green leaves, blooming into a flower with a fishy scent. I paused. The pain grew from the wound, and I realized I had cut my hand. In a moment of impulse, I couldn't hold back. Old and new scars crisscrossed, adding another to the collection. From my arm to my wrist, the knife fell to the ground, and I knelt, gasping for air. It seemed I was increasingly losing control over myself, engaging in self-harm. The doctor had said before, when the illness flares up, you must take your medication, but I hadn't. She also said, let your family be with you, Julia, communicate more with your family, feel loved. It's good for your condition. But, I looked at the winding trail of blood, but, I had no family. The food I cooked last night went uneaten. All thrown away, hunger and pain entangled, eventually knocking me out cold on my bed. Someone knocked on the door early in the morning. Groggily, I got up from the sofa, walked to the door, and cracked it open. As soon as I saw who it was, I was fully awake. The man's face was frosty as usual, expressionless. Instinctively, I pulled the door, and the loud clash of steel momentarily separated us. I quickly went back to my room to put on a jacket and changed into long pants. When I opened the door again, Jack's gaze fell coldly upon my face. What is it? I skipped any pleasantries. His gaze drifted down to my hand on the doorknob, noticing the small colorful tattoo on my wrist. Jack squinted, his voice cold. You got a tattoo on your arm too? I didn't respond, and Jack took my silence as an affirmation. His normally indifferent demeanor stirred. Do you have to keep hanging out with that bastard, turning yourself into the same kind of trash? I knew Jack was always harsh with his words. At our worst, our exchanges were like knives dipped in poison, sparing no mercy. But he shouldn't talk about Zara, because she was my one and only, my best friend. The faint smell of tobacco from the man mingled with a throbbing vein on my forehead, nauseating. The abdominal pain that had subsided flared up again, my hand gripping the doorknob, trembling uncontrollably. But I still couldn't hold back. The slap I anticipated landing on his face never did. Instead, he grasped my wrist tightly, his body warmth touching the old scars. I could clearly see a flicker of surprise on Jack's face as he started, the scars on your wrist. But before he could finish, I slapped him again. The man's head turned slightly, a large red mark appearing on his pale face from the force I used. Threads of tobacco scent entangled my nerves, a cold fear rising from the soles of my feet, slowly enveloping my entire body. I struggled to free myself from his grip. My wrist already reddened substantially. Clasping my hands tightly together was the only way to keep myself from trembling violently. Julia, get lost. I lowered my eyes, staring fixedly at my feet. Don't touch me, get out. Jack left. I rushed to the bathroom, frantically scrubbing my hands with a towel where Jack had touched them. The rough scrubbing broke the skin, and the combination of blood and cold water trickled down, the stark colors jolting my brain. I leaned against the sink, gasping for air. Finally, I calmed down. When the delivery person came at noon with a big bag, I laid out each item on the coffee table. The rich aroma tantalized my taste buds, and my stomach, starved for 2 days, surrendered. I grabbed my chopsticks and stuffed myself with the food, but I ate too much and felt terribly nauseous, so I ended up in the bathroom again, vomiting everything out. The bathroom floor soaked my dress. The pain near death felt so vivid, I collapsed on the floor. Scrolling through my phone's chat history, a conversation stopped 1 month ago. Zara's last message asked me what I had eaten today. I hadn't replied, nor had I told her when I received the diagnosis. 5 years of friendship. So long yet so brief, long enough to be deeply engraved into my life, yet brief enough to be flicked through in just a few hours. Are you sure you want to delete this chat with your sister? The red text was somewhat glaring, but the increasing stomach pain urged me. and I pressed the delete button. 5 years of memories vanished in an instant, along with the last tie I had in this world. On the day of my diagnosis, the doctor looked into my eyes and earnestly advised. Although it's late-stage stomach cancer, with active treatment and a positive outlook, you could live another 2 or 3 years. I smiled and thanked him, but did not engage further. I had no compelling reason to keep living. My brother, too, had once fervently wished for my death. I stayed at home in a daze, not knowing for how many days. I continuously cycled through hunger, binge eating, and vomiting, depleting my life. When I casually checked my phone, I realized the days were nearing. I tidied up a bit, thinking of buying a suitable dress at the mall. Looking in the mirror, I noticed my cheeks had rapidly thinned, my face pale and colorless. I decided to put on some makeup. The mall was not crowded on a weekday. I wandered aimlessly through the floors until I spotted a beautiful white dress in a shop window. As I entered, the sales associate approached me warmly. Just as I pointed to the dress and was about to speak, a playful voice outside exclaimed, "Jack, that white dress is beautiful." What a coincidence. Jennifer stepped in, our eyes meeting. Her doe eyes widened in surprise, joyfully calling out, "Julia," as if there were no hard feelings. Jack stood at the entrance, looking at me coldly. How nice, the sister back from abroad, shopping with her brother. I smiled sarcastically, ignoring them. That dress, size M, wrap it up for me. I'll take one too, size M. Jennifer and I both pointed to the white dress. The sales associate looked over apologetically. This model has been very popular this year, and only the one on the mannequin in size M is left. If you ladies don't mind, you might want to check out the other styles. Let me check if the company still has stock, I said, cutting Jennifer off as she was about to speak. Wrap it up for me, please. The saleswoman nodded and turned to fetch it. Julia, Jennifer suddenly called out to me. I looked up at her. What's up? Could you let me have this dress? She looked apologetic. You know how much I love white dresses, Julia, and you hardly ever wear them. It was as if she had no shame. I glanced at Jack, who averted his gaze, seemingly indulgent toward Jennifer. Ridiculous. After all these years, she hasn't changed at all. Everything she likes, she expects me to give up for her. Toys, clothes, and even family members. No. I rejected her coldly. Jennifer was taken aback, watching me as I took the wrapped dress. Her eyes moistened again as she lowered her head and returned to Jack's side. Jack whispered something to her, and her eyes lit up with joy as she happily took Jack's arm, not forgetting to shoot me a glance, as if triumphantly flaunting that my brother was now hers. In reality, the dress didn't matter. What she wanted was for me to see that my brother seemed to love her a bit more. But who cares? After all, it had been like this for over a decade. Days passed one after another. My health was deteriorating. Jack had not reached out to me anymore. I flipped through the calendar, counting the limited time I had left, until one day, I received a text from Jennifer. She invited me to a banquet and added a message. Julia, Jack is worried about you. This could be a good opportunity for you two to mend your relationship. She was always excellent at playing dumb. I checked the calendar and decided to go. The hall was dazzlingly lit, with elegantly dressed people coming and going. The clinking of glasses mixing with the noisy crowd, creating a lively scene. Having been alone for too long, I felt out of place in such a bustling environment. Not far away, Jack and Jennifer stood together, chatting with others. Jack glanced at me, his expression changing slightly, his face turning slightly towards me, but he didn't move. It was as if he was waiting for me to come over and start a conversation. But I wasn't going to. Jennifer turned back and saw me too. She immediately walked towards me with a smile, but I turned and left the busy banquet hall without hesitation. The wind was strong on the balcony. I sat on the edge, listening to the laughter and chatter from the banquet hall behind me, calculating how much longer it would last before I could go home. Suddenly, someone grabbed me from behind, and I fell back into a stranger's arms. The overwhelming smell of tobacco engulfed me instantly, and I felt the urge to vomit. I struggled against the discomfort, pushing away the strange man who had appeared suddenly, only to see Jennifer standing behind him in her beautiful dress, winking at me. My phone in the small bag vibrated softly. I picked it up to see a message from her. Julia, Joey just saw you. Let me introduce him to you. I brought him over. He's a good person. You two should get along well. As I was typing in the dialogue box, someone grabbed my wrist. Joey's gaze fell on my chest and then subtly shifted away. Just that one look brought back all my old fears. I forcefully slapped his hand away. Even though there was nothing in my stomach, I couldn't help but retch. He moved closer to me, and I slowly backed away. The dim lighting, the heavy smell of smoke, a tall stranger, everything snapped the last thread of sanity in my mind, covering my mouth. I retched, trembling as I pulled a switchblade from my bag, my hand shaking uncontrollably. The blade grazed his skin, and slowly, blood began to fill my entire world. Julia, as the roar sounded, someone slapped my hand away, and the knife clattered to the ground, reflecting the cold moonlight from the window. Are you insane? Jack's voice thundered like a storm. I felt as if someone was choking me, the veins on my forehead pulsating. Something in my brain seemed about to burst, covering my mouth, my eyes dry and painful. I gasped for air like a small animal. Jennifer, dressed in a beautiful gown, arrived gracefully. Gasping in shock, her voice choked. What happened, Joey? How did you get hurt? Didn't you say you liked Julia and wanted to talk to her? The strange man furrowed his brows. I haven't done anything yet. She suddenly pulled out a knife. Jack, Jennifer suddenly called out to Jack. I still trust Joey's character. The implication was clear. Breathing heavily, I reached out and slapped her, but Jack, who was standing in front of her, pushed me away, and I fell clumsily to the ground. 3 people looked down on me from above. My stomach hurt, my eyes hurt, my head hurt. It felt like every part of my body was in pain. I felt like a malfunctioning robot about to fall apart, my mind in chaos. I heard Jack's cold rebuke. What on earth are you freaking out about, Julia? Are you sick, Julia? Are you sick? Are you sick? I wanted to cry, but I couldn't cry. I could only lean against the wall, enduring the pain, slowly getting up from the ground. Yes, I am sick. I don't have long to live. Leaning against the door, I mustered all my strength just to stand upright. I knew my stomach was empty, nothing to throw up, but then my throat felt sweet. Thick blood flowed from my mouth, dripping onto my clothes and then onto the floor. I saw Jack freeze for a moment. I saw him instinctively want to come over and touch me, but I stepped back. Why don't you ask me? Why don't you ask what he did to me? You're willing to believe Jennifer's side of the story, but you never listen to me. You never do, because you never care. In the end, it's always my fault, because I am the sinner. I owe my mother's life, right? The room suddenly fell silent. My brother was only momentarily flustered. Then he quickly regained his composure. I heard him respond to me in his usual calm tone, asking, "Isn't that the case? Isn't that the case?" Yes, it is. Yet, I still couldn't cry, even though my eyes were painfully sore. Not a single tear would fall. So I'm going to pay with my life for Mom soon. This was the last time I called him brother. I looked at Jack and smiled faintly. I'm going to die soon. Are you happy, brother? Jack couldn't catch Julia that night. She vanished on the street corner. Afterward, he often thought if only he had been quicker that day, if only he had grabbed Julia's hand, preventing her from leaving. Julia didn't return home. Her mobile number was blocked, and on message, only a stark exclamation mark remained. Jack spent 2 days smoking under her apartment building, but she never appeared at the entrance again. 20 years of blood relation felt as thin as a sheet of paper. Once she went missing, he had no way to find her again. He went to the hospital. The bespectacled doctor, expressionless, just shook his head and sighed. Find her as soon as possible. If this drags on, she really doesn't have many months left to live. Jack hung his head, like a student being scolded. Why did she get this disease? Young people don't take care of their bodies. The doctor sighed again. Jack's fingernails dug into his flesh. On the 8th day after losing contact with Julia, Jack finally broke into her home, after the locksmith had packed up his tools. Jack was immediately hit by an overwhelmingly foul smell as he entered. It was his first time inside her home. 20 years had passed in which he had been too busy harboring resentment against Julia to ever have a proper conversation with her. The room was sparsely furnished, hardly what one would expect of a place lived in by a woman in her 20s. Unknown liquids dripped from the fridge, which he discovered was full of rotten contents when he opened it. The kitchen, bathroom, study, and bedroom all seemed cold and unoccupied, yet they were clean, proof that she had been there. In the bedroom, there was a shattered large glass bottle, glass fragments and colorful pills were scattered all over the floor, as if violently smashed. Jack, with a keen eye, noticed an empty cardboard box on the desk. The words printed on it sent a chill down his spine. Venlafaxine, a type of antidepressant. Jack rushed out of the door. The gloom that had hung over him since he entered did not dissipate. The emotions that had been building over the days finally overwhelmed him, as if announcing a dire secret that was on the verge of being revealed. Secretive and hopeless, he knelt under the harsh sun, suddenly gripped by a desperate and helpless thought. If he didn't find Julia soon, he might never see her alive again. On the 12th day of Julia's disappearance, Jack called Zara. It was the middle of the night across the ocean, and the woman who answered the phone was not in a good mood. She cursed softly before asking who it was. "It's me, Jack." He had never liked Zara, who had inexplicably become his sister's best friend when they were 18. He knew the feeling was mutual. The woman on the other end cursed him thoroughly before finally asking, "What do you want? Do you know where Julia has gone? What's happened?" The tone of the voice on the other end changed immediately. Jack struggled to get the words out, bitterness spreading in his mouth. "Has stomach cancer." The call was abruptly ended, leaving a series of busy tones. Jack held his phone, at a loss. A minute later, he called again, and the phone was picked up. Zara's sobbing voice was clear as it echoed through the empty room, her emotion palpable. Jack pleaded, "Please, help me find her. If she agrees to treatment, she could live another year or two. Please." Zara sobbed uncontrollably on the phone. "A few more years. What good are a few more years for her, Jack? You know nothing." Jack froze. "I do know," he murmured. "Know what?" "That she..." Zara scoffed coldly. "Jack, you are the person I hate most in this world. Jennifer is your sister, so isn't Julia your sister too? Did you know she has already died once?" Jack, the crying and questioning merged into one, cutting through thousands of miles like a knife, piercing Jack's heart sharply. "Did you know Julia died when she was 18? He should have known so many details. From the age of 18, Julia suddenly became aloof. She became indifferent to all men, keeping them at arm's length. It was also from that time that she stopped wearing skirts and short clothes, always dressing in long sleeves and pants, even in the hottest weather. And then there was the scar on her wrist, the knife she always carried, the scattered antidepressants. Her only sister, sharing the same blood, had begun to wither away as early as 18. That year when I turned 18, I made a call to Jack. I didn't know why I called him, perhaps clinging to a sliver of hope, wishing he could save me. If only he had a bit of compassion, if only he cared about me a little, if only he could let me know that there was someone in this world who loved me, I might have seen a glimmer of hope for life amidst the overwhelming urge to self-destruct. When the call connected, he was as cold as ever. I called out, "Brother," not with resentment as usual, but softly asked him, "If I really died, please, what would you do? Save me." The fruit knife on the table reflected the light from the window. I heard my own breathing blend with the shadows in the room. My hand holding the phone trembled slightly. Jack didn't scold me, calling me crazy. I heard his voice, cold and calm. It shattered on the ground, breaking into icy shards, and swiftly, precisely, it struck my heart. He said, "That would be great. You killed Mom. You deserve to die." In an instant, the sea water submerged my head, and I kept sinking down. Then, just as I was about to suffocate, I suddenly woke up, gasping like a wild animal. When the blade cut through my skin, it actually didn't hurt much. The moment the dark red blood flowed, it seemed to take me back to that day, in a desolate alley, where no light could penetrate. A strange man with a force I couldn't resist fiercely pulled my hair back. I cried and screamed. I said I was wrong. "I'm sorry. Please, please let me go. Please, let me go. Please." He didn't. He was like the cruelest beast in the world. Little by little, he dragged me into the deepest darkness. He slapped me many times. For every plea, I received a slap, until the salty taste spread in my mouth and I could no longer speak a complete sentence. He tore my clothes. The smell of burnt flesh mixed with the scent of cheap tobacco invaded my nostrils. "Ignite, extinguish, ignite, extinguish, moving slowly from my waist to my neck and shoulders, until an entire cigarette turned to ash. I don't know how much time passed. From crying out loud to numbly enduring, I lay in the filthy mud, the beast rampaging over me. I smelled the burnt scent of my own flesh and the rot coming from inside. If only I could die right then, but what did I do wrong? I was just walking on the road, just wearing my favorite dress. Did I do something wrong? I don't know. When he left that day, the mud on the ground was almost becoming one with me. I stood there, bare and vulnerable, engulfed in darkness. If only Julia had never been born. If only I had never come into this world. That's when Zara appeared. I didn't know her, yet. She called out my name with precise certainty. She took off her clothes to cover me, carefully wiped the mud from my face, and, trembling, picked me up. She took me to the police station, then she brought me home. When I returned, it was already midnight. The man who was my father in name only was unusually sitting in the living room, but he only glanced at me, overlooking my messy hair, my dirty and tattered clothes, and my uncomfortable, foul-smelling body. Then he quickly looked away. Just like before, later, he left again, and once more, I was alone at home. Every time I closed my eyes, I returned to that day, my burnt skin rotting little by little in the summer heat. Maybe it would be better to be dead, but I didn't die. It was Zara again. A strange call came through. A familiar female voice apologized for the intrusion, rambling about trivial matters, trying to sound casual as if to hide something. So I confronted her directly. "Why are you calling me?" She hesitated, suddenly. She stuttered, struggling to form a complete sentence. It took a while before she seemed to muster the courage. "Don't die, Julia. I was afraid you might take your own life. That's why I remembered your phone number." I hadn't expected her to be so blunt. Her words were scorching, burning so intensely that my eyes ached. I could hear her breathing in the room, tense and hesitant. I saw the blood flowing on the table, dripping onto the floor, blooming like plum blossoms, and the knife reflecting the cold light. Finally, I said, "Okay, please, call an ambulance." I survived, but I couldn't move on. The dark shadows, like nightmares, wove an inescapable net every night, trapping me within. I hate the smell of smoke. I hate the darkness. I hate myself. He lurks in the shadows, in every dark place, unpredictable, ready to pull me back into the abyss at any moment. I remember every detail of that night, the pain, the smells. I am so painfully aware of the pain, aware of the desire to die, and aware of being alive. Zara accompanied me to see a psychologist. The doctor suggested I should be hospitalized. I didn't go. Instead, she prescribed me a lot of medications, but I didn't take any of them. I opened them all and placed them in a transparent glass jar. Zara stayed with me all summer. It was a sunny summer, but I always stayed indoors. She tirelessly played various board and card games with me. She talked to me about the latest TV shows and anime. I knew, though. Every night, she would watch me and quietly cry. The next morning, her eyes were always swollen. One day, after taking a shower, Zara saw me standing on the balcony and was nearly in tears. I looked at her. It started raining again. "Zara," I called her name. "Can you be my sister? I don't have a mother. My brother hates me. My father treats me like a stranger. My body is broken, my soul decayed. I have nothing." She rushed over and hugged me, her hot tears soaking into my clothes. She said, "Okay, sweet Julia, from now on, I'm your sister. You have to promise me, promise your sister, that you'll keep living, okay?" I hugged her back. "Sister," I said, "don't let me hold you back, okay? I'm destined not to survive. Normality is just a facade. Inside, I'm already collapsed into ruins, waiting for death." After that summer, Jennifer went abroad, Jack joined a company, Zara got into university. Everyone moved forward, only I remained, stuck at a battered 18. I could smell the rot on myself. Getting worse since that night. On the day Zara started university, I saw her off. Her eyes were red at the airport, but she didn't shed a tear. She held me close, repeating my name over and over. Finally, she whispered in my ear, "Julia, if you can't hold on, just let go." She knew everything. She knew every scar etched on my body. She knew how I struggled daily in the mire. She knew about every moment my emotions collapsed. And how I resorted to self-destruction to ease the pain. I hugged her back. After Zara left, I seemed to return to normal, but each day was torture. I no longer had the energy to argue with Jack. Just living was exhausting enough, binge eating, irregular sleep, neglecting my health. When I was diagnosed with stomach cancer, I was happy, because I could finally die. I had already decided on the day to leave. It was the anniversary of my mother's death. It was also my birthday. But in over 20 years, I had only celebrated it twice, both times with Zara, actually. Jack didn't know. I envied others who had mothers. I envied those girls who could be held in their mother's arms, their hair tied in pretty braids. I hated myself more than anyone else. When the day arrived, it was just an ordinary day. My stomach pain was as usual. I ate 2 buns in the morning, only to vomit them out immediately. Then I curled up on the sofa, flipping through my photo album, deleting each photo one by one. After the last one was gone, I got up and walked towards the balcony. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the living room. The door of the old district couldn't withstand any disturbance. A familiar figure stumbled into my sight. My brother. Haven't seen him in days. He looked as if he had aged several years. I guess Zara told him. After all, this place, I only mentioned it to Zara once. The man, disheveled, gasping for breath, his normally straight back now stooped. He looked at me with shattered eyes. For the first time, I saw my brother, who had always been aloof and emotionless. With tears welling up in his eyes, he begged me humbly. I was wrong, Julia. It was my fault. His apology came over a decade too late. Yet, standing on the railing, I just looked at him, completely unmoved. A tall man, nearly 6 feet, sobbing uncontrollably. I was wearing a dress, a clean, white one, bought that day from the mall. It revealed every ugly scar on my body to him, not tattoos. These were marks left from every struggle between nightmares and reality. They were a testament to my deepest self-loathing. The tiles under my feet were ice cold. Don't jump, Julia, please, don't jump. The wind howled in my ears. Yet, I looked at Jack and smiled. Jumping off a building is painful. Let it hurt one last time. After a lifetime of suffering, maybe in the next life, God will be kinder to me. Jack. I softly called his name, stepped into the void, and my body uncontrollably plummeted. I saw his expression turn to panic, saw him rushing towards me, but I just smiled. I'm going to find Mom. Jack couldn't catch her. His sister died right before his eyes. Epilogue. Upon opening his eyes, 5-year-old Julia, with a bead of blood on her finger and tears on her eyelashes, stood not far from him, looking at him secretly. Did it all start then? Actually, before Julia was born, everyone was looking forward to her arrival. Jack also wanted a sister badly. His mother, lying in bed, stroked his head and told him to always protect his sister. He nodded solemnly. The little princess. I'm the knight. I will protect her for life. But after she was born, everything changed. Their mother was gone. She became a little box, then a cold stone. She couldn't speak or move. No one would stroke his hair and call him by his nickname, no one to hold him close, no one to whisper that Mom loves you. On the day of the funeral, it rained heavily. Returning home, Jack was soaked through. Cries echoed from the nursery upstairs. The wrinkled baby was utterly hideous. The sound of rain and crying intertwined, slowly fraying his nerves. He no longer had a mother. His sister had killed his mother. That's when he began to despise Julia, his sister. He knew it was absurd. A child who knew nothing was not to blame, but he couldn't help it. He distanced himself from Julia as much as he could, not playing with her, not talking to her, shouting at her coldly, yet he inevitably felt irritated every time he saw Julia looking sad and lost. He hated her, yet loved her, his sister, both innocent and culpable, connected by blood. What did he do back then? He yelled at Julia, told her to get lost. Childhood traumas last a lifetime, so much so that as Julia grew up, they could never have the affectionate sibling relationship. Thus, she never shared anything with him, swallowing all her pain alone. Even strangers knew more about it than he did. Julia blinked and was still secretly watching him. When Jack looked over, the little girl jumped in fright. Tears threatened to fall again. Come here. Julia froze in place. He sighed, turned to fetch the first aid kit, and knelt before her to gently apply the medicine. Does it hurt? Julia stared at the band-aid on her hand, her eyelashes wet with tears, seemingly dazed. Suddenly, her face flushed, and she hugged Jack tightly. Thank you, Jack. Jack was stunned. He had never hugged Julia before. In over 20 years, this was the first time. The little girl's body was soft and warm. Why hadn't he hugged her sooner? Trembling, Jack reached out and held her tightly. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He apologized over and over. Julia frantically wiped away his tears. Jack, don't cry. In the end, she started crying herself. I was wrong, Jack. Don't cry. I was wrong. Please don't cry anymore, Jack. I won't bother you again. My blood frightened you. I'll apply the medicine myself from now on. Jack, don't cry. I'm sorry. You did nothing wrong. It was Jack's fault, Julia. It has always been Jack's fault. Please don't be mad at me, okay? The little girl couldn't stop her tears, sniffing as she responded. As long as Jack stops crying, I won't be mad. Good. Jack won't cry anymore. Don't be mad at your Jack. In this lifetime, Jack will protect you and ensure you grow up safe and sound. Jack knew their father didn't like Julia. He could only try his best to make it up to her, to compensate for the 20 years he had missed in their past life. Julia was like a soft cotton doll, seemingly never holding a grudge for the years of his indifference. She always cheerfully called him Jack, her smile bright and innocent. He thought it was because she was young and forgetful, until one day, Julia accidentally knocked over a cup on the coffee table. It didn't break, it just fell over. The little girl immediately looked up at him with wide eyes, her body slightly shrinking as she trembled with an apology. Jack, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Please, don't hate me. It suddenly dawned on him. He had yelled at her over such trivial things. Scolded her. She remembered it all. You did nothing wrong. No need to apologize. Jack gently stroked her head, the little girl's eyes downcast, tears dropping to the floor. What's wrong? Jack asked softly. Jack, will things go back to how they were? She clutched at her skirt, asking in a soft voice. Zara told me that you can make a wish on your birthday, and a fairy will help make it come true. I don't know when my birthday is, but I still made a wish. I wished that Jack would be nicer to me. Jack. Julia looked up, her eyes twinkling like little stars. Did the fairy tell you? She fell into a warm embrace. Cold tears fell on her neck. Her Jack, crying again. He did. The fairy also said that from now on, any wish Julia has, Jack will make it come true. Then I wish for Jack to be happier and not cry anymore. When Julia was 13, Jennifer wanted to stay with their family, but Jack refused. Their father didn't say a word. It was Julia, wearing a new dress he had bought for her, who tugged at him and asked, why can't she stay with us? I could go to school with her, and then brother wouldn't always have to pick me up. His sister was kind-hearted and cheerful. Her smile was free of any shadows. Jack patted her head. One sister is enough for me. Julia, touched, smiled coyly. You're the best, brother. Jack remained silent. He had only one wish, for Julia to grow up happy and healthy. When Julia turned 15, she was accepted into the best local high school, just like in her previous life, but this time, she held her acceptance letter, proudly and brightly boasting to him, brother, I got into your high school, the best one. Jack took out a gift he had prepared in advance. Well done, Julia. The girl spun around the room with laughter, holding his hand and giggling. I'm going to board at school for high school. Then half-jokingly scolded him. Don't call me all the time at university. I hear you're very busy. Jack watched her laugh. Julia. Yes, make sure you grow up well. I know. I know. Julia laughed too. At 17, Jack saw her post on social media, two girls laughing brightly. A person next to them had trimmed eyebrows and wore earrings. It was Zara. When he called, it was initially hung up. A little while later, it was returned. The voice on the other end affectionately called out, brother. Jack paused. After a long moment, he asked, planning to go shopping with your friend this weekend? I'll send you some money. No need. Julia laughed on the other end. We've planned to go to the library and study hard. When it was almost time for Julia's college entrance exams, he rushed back to see her. Every day, he stayed at home preparing nutritious meals for her, more nervous than Julia herself. On the day of the exams, he brought many things. He stood there all day. When the last exam ended, Julia was the first to come out. Not even the reporters at the door could stop her. The sunlight was bright that day. She ran towards him, her smile radiant. She rushed into his arms, loudly shouting, "Brother, I'm done with the exams." Jack hugged her back. "Congratulations." On Julia's 18th birthday, he organized a grand coming-of-age ceremony for her, under the huge crystal chandelier. Julia appeared wearing a crown and a beautifully elaborate dress, looking like a real princess. Everyone clapped together. She looked towards Jack in the crowd, their eyes meeting. She mouthed, "Thank you, brother." Julia's eyes resembled his. They sparkled beautifully when she smiled, as if the stars in the sky were crushed into her eyes. 18-year-old Julia, vibrant, beautiful, and resilient. His sister. After the party, Jack visited their mother's grave. The woman in the black and white photo was young and beautiful. Julia resembled her a little. Jack stood there for a long time, his hand resting on the cold tombstone. "Mom, your little princess, has grown up safe and sound." Julia graduated at 22 but chose not to join his company, opting instead for a job she loved. They video call each other occasionally. Despite the evident exhaustion on Julia's face, her happiness couldn't be concealed. Jack noticed the dark circles under her eyes. "If you're tired, talk to your brother. Brother has money." The person on the other side of the video call chuckled dismissively, and then someone else took over the phone. Zara leaned closer to the screen. "Jack, don't worry, I'm keeping an eye on Julia. Everything is fine." But Julia could be heard yelling in the background. Zara's voice was filled with laughter. "You should be meeting your brother-in-law soon." The video call was abruptly ended. Jack sat at his desk, unable to snap back to reality for a long time. Life had been too good, too smooth, like a dream, an illusory reflection in the mirror. Julia was nearly 24 and about to get married. Jack had met the man many times, gentle and refined. He truly loved Julia. The night before the wedding, Jack visited his mother again. "Mom, I won't come over tomorrow since Julia is getting married. Your little princess has found her prince. From now on, she will have two people to protect her." "Mom, if this is a dream, can it last a little longer?" The bride disappeared. Every part of the ceremony was disrupted. Guests were in uproar, and the scene was chaotic. Zara, in her bridesmaid's gown, ran tirelessly around the hotel, frantically calling out Julia's name. Her phone calls went unanswered. The last message was an "I love you" emoji sent by Julia the day before. Sending more messages only returned bright red exclamation marks, just like that day. Jack rushed to the 18th floor like a madman, knocking on every door, getting cursed at, and then desperately moving to the next. Finally, in a room that was unlocked, he found her. Julia looked beautiful that day, dressed in a long white gown with layers of tulle and lace. Her face was delicately made up, her bare arms smooth and pale. She stood on the edge of the balcony. The wind lifted the veil from her hair. She said nothing, just looked at him. "Julia." Julia met his eyes. She smiled. Today was her birthday, and it was also the day she died. The next second, she fell backward straight off the edge. No, Jack's eyes were split with agony. All the scenes rapidly receded, moving forward like a carousel. The blood on her white dress overlapped with the blood on her wedding gown. Countless Julias merged together, some laughing, some crying, all frozen on that day. She had jumped from the 18th floor. She said, "Jack, I'm going to find Mom, don't." Jack woke from the dream into the pitch-dark night. A teenage Julia in her school uniform stood on his bedside table. Jack switched on the light. The photo immediately brightened. The person in the photo did not smile, but the Julia in his dreams always curved her eyes and called out sweetly, "Brother." The Julia in his dreams was unharmed, free from depression. He had no ailments. Life, once past, cannot be relived. He had always known this, so why hadn't he been kinder to Julia sooner, his sister? Now gone, never to return. The wind outside fiercely shook the windows. The man leaned on his hands, crying silently. Jack had tried countless times to recall the hardships she had endured. Each time, it inevitably led to his own torment. Day after day, he was breaking down under the weight of his remorse. At the age of 36, he went to find Julia, Side story. From Zara's perspective. Zara first met Julia in their freshman year of high school. Julia was from the class next door. Her picture was a fixture on the honor board, always sporting a high ponytail with a serene expression. Teachers on their floor often mentioned her name with praise when discussing students who had been sent to the office for discipline. Zara didn't have much fondness for good students, especially those who seemed to have a perfect, happy family. So unlike her own circumstances, their lives had no intersection, not even familiar enough to recognize each other's faces in the same hallway. Until one day, as Zara passed through the corridor, she overheard whispering that abruptly ceased when she turned around, leaving her inexplicably annoyed with nowhere to direct her frustration. She kept walking, only to be stopped by someone pulling on her from behind. It was the girl from the photos, taking off her jacket and gesturing Zara to tie it around her waist. Only then did Zara realize there was a large red stain on her pants. It was still somewhat chilly in early autumn. Julia, her arms covered in goosebumps, ran to the store to fetch something for Zara. Zara thanked her, and Julia, with a gentle smile and a slight bend in her brows, softly said, "You're welcome." It was then Zara noticed how beautiful Julia's smile was, like a lovely magnolia. At that time, Zara couldn't have imagined that their second significant encounter would occur under such circumstances. Zara's performance in the college entrance exam was stable, barely missing the cutoff for second-tier universities. With constant quarrels at home, she often wandered outside to avoid troubles. One evening, she passed an alley and noticed a small pendant on the ground. It was the one usually dangling from Julia's backpack. As she turned into the alley, her mind went blank. The dim light from her phone illuminated a motionless figure on the ground. The familiar face was smeared with mud, its eyes hollow, staring in her direction. The girl's clothes were torn, her exposed back covered in bright red wounds. A faint smell of burning lingered in her nostrils, mingling with the muddy earth beneath. It felt as if Zara had been slapped hard, the scene before her cutting deep into her heart, tearing it into pieces. Her magnolia was lying in the mud, barely alive. Zara couldn't bear to think about what Julia had gone through before her arrival. She managed to wrap her own clothes around Julia, trembling as she lifted her up and took her to report to the police. She couldn't recall what Julia, sitting expressionless in the chair, had told the officers. Zara drove Julia home. Julia sat next to the car window, draped in Zara's clothes, a lifeless figure as the flickering shadows from the streetlights played across her face. Zara watched her, holding back tears, her eyes stinging. She didn't know what to say. Julia didn't recognize her, and it wasn't the time to reminisce. She couldn't comfort Julia like a close friend, allowing her to cry freely. All she could do was bring her home, yet, she was still afraid. All soulless things are the same, wooden puppets painted in bright colors, insects left as empty shells in corners, dead fish with white eyes drifting with the current. And Julia, that day, trapped in the mud. When Zara awoke from her afternoon nightmare, her heart raced faster than ever before, the feeling of impending loss growing stronger. The sound of arguing continued at home. She closed her eyes, and there was Julia's face from that evening, silent and sorrowful, as if pleading for help, yet as if she had completely fallen. Zara ended up dialing her number anyway. During the lengthy busy signal, she chewed her nails, praying incessantly, "Pick up the phone, pick up the phone." Even just to hear her voice would be enough, at least to know that Julia was still alive. The moment the phone connected, Zara almost cried with joy. Julia's voice was faint, asking who it was, what she wanted. Zara stiffened instantly, never too bright. She didn't know what to say in such situations and foolishly brought up some irrelevant topics. By the end, she didn't even know what she was talking about. But Julia didn't hang up. She kept listening on the other end of the line. Finally, she spoke. "Why did you call me?" Zara was taken aback. Why? Because she was scared. She was terrified. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Julia's unfocused eyes, her spirit dead. She feared that one day, Julia would just vanish from this world. Zara's hands trembled as she held the phone. Tears fell drop by drop. "Don't die, Julia, don't die." Zara clung to Julia, so much so that in countless moments to come, Zara deeply hated herself. Why didn't she let her go more peacefully? Zara moved into Julia's house. There was no one else there. Occasionally, Julia's brother would visit, and their interaction was as cold as if they were strangers. Jack didn't like her. Zara knew it, but she disliked Jack too. How could a brother be so ignorant of his own sister's plight? Julia was not talkative. She always shut herself in her bedroom. Zara spent her days studying how to heal psychological trauma. Cautiously trying to cover up the events of that day, Julia initially didn't respond. Gradually, she would exchange a word or two with her. She thought everything was slowly getting better, until that day, she saw Julia standing on the balcony. The wind was so strong, it seemed like it could blow her away any moment. She almost broke down, but the next second she saw her. Julia came down. "Zara, can you be my sister?" "Yes, actually." Zara would agree to anything she asked. That night, Zara held her and cried for a long time. But she didn't cry. Zara had never seen Julia shed tears. Even in extreme pain, she never cried. Her sister was so tormented to the point she couldn't even cry. Later, Zara accompanied Julia to see a psychologist. The doctor prescribed many medications. Julia agreed to go back to school. Gradually, it seemed everything was getting better. Julia was slowly returning to normal. She had Julia drag her back to retake the exams. Every day was spent under supervision studying. A year later, looking at her own transcript, she almost cried. But on the night they decided which school to attend, she and Julia had a fight. Schools abroad were good, but they were too far from Julia. She was afraid. Julia stood at the door. She remained silent, her eyes downcast. Then she raised her hand. Slowly, she began to peel off her clothes, one piece at a time. She saw the ugly, intersecting scars crisscrossing Julia's body. Some were still bleeding, big and small. They covered her entirely. It turned out that the so-called improvement was just an illusion. For the first time, Zara felt utterly helpless. It dawned on her that in this world, there are some people who simply cannot be saved. The cracked puppet walked towards her. Step by step, Julia carefully wiped the tears from her face, then gently embraced her. "Sister, don't get trapped by me." Her voice was barely audible. "I would hate myself." That night, the feeling of powerlessness overwhelmed her again. The magnolia Zara had fought so hard to save ultimately perished in the mud. It had withered long ago. The day Julia saw her off to the plane, Zara held back her tears, until she boarded the plane. On the journey to a foreign land, she cried like a teenager. She knew Julia wouldn't survive. In fact, there had been signs all along, but when Jack's call came through to her, she still broke down inevitably. What good would living a few more years do? Let her die. Living is too painful. Don't keep her here any longer. The day Julia jumped from the 18th floor, Zara was at the door. She knew Julia wouldn't want to see her there. The moment she heard Jack's heart-wrenching scream, she saw a white figure plummeting from the window. Zara stumbled down the stairs, white intertwined with red. It stung her eyes painfully. She carefully held Julia's hand, and covered her bloodied body with her clothes. "Next life, I'll be your real sister, okay?" Julia could no longer speak, but Zara knew, she would have wanted it. On the day of Julia's funeral, Zara didn't cry. She wore beautiful makeup and saw Julia off on her last journey. A few people stood in the chapel. Julia's father stood in front of her photo, staring blankly, motionless. Her brother was talking to the guests. Zara placed a bouquet of magnolias. As she turned, she caught sight of Jennifer, dressed in a black skirt, her eyes red. She approached and stood in front of Julia, putting on airs. Zara was never known for her patience. In the past, it was because of her sister, fragile like a flower. Always brought tears to her eyes, taught her to speak softly. Now that Julia was gone, Zara, in her high heels, kicked Jennifer behind the leg. Jennifer yelped in pain and knelt down in front of Julia. Everyone in the chapel turned to look their way. Zara met Jack's eyes, her gaze challenging. The man just glanced and then looked away. Zara had been a bit of a delinquent for years, smoking, skipping school, fighting. She had done it all. She grabbed Jennifer's hair, forced her to kneel in front of Julia, and kowtowed 3 times. The girl's forehead turned red, her eyes brimming with tears. Zara let go, and Jennifer collapsed to the ground. Zara stepped on her hand, grinding her high heel in. Jennifer's tears fell. Zara crouched down, laughing softly. I'm the delinquent. I am different from Julia. She has morals. I don't, Jennifer. My sister suffered a lot, and I intend to return every bit of it to you, as long as I am alive. Don't even think about having peace. On Julia's second birthday, it rained heavily. Zara bought a beautiful bouquet of flowers and some of her favorite snacks, but she arrived late. Someone else got there earlier. The rain that day was torrential. The figure on the steps stood for a long time, soaked to the bone, just staring blankly at the name on the tombstone. Zara didn't want to go over. She despised Jack immensely, yet, the man seemed rooted in front of the grave. For hours on end, the flowers in her hand were wilting. The cemetery caretaker struck up a conversation with her, pointing to the dark figure in the rain. He whispered, "This man comes often, stands for a long time. I don't even know who is buried there that he knows." "A person unrelated to him," Zara replied coldly, not taking an umbrella, rushing into the rain with the flowers and snacks. Jack seemed to sense something and turned his head as she approached. The man's face was haggard, his expressionless visage indistinguishable between raindrops and tear streaks, his eyes nearly bleeding. Zara set down the flowers, then swiftly and fiercely slapped him. The man took her slap, his face turned to one side, flushing red. A trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth, yet he said nothing. Zara withdrew her hand. "I want to talk to Julia." The man closed his eyes. Silently, he turned and walked away. Zara watched him leave, then spat out a curse. "Julia, may you haunt his dreams and torment him to death. By the way, I have good news for you, Julia. Jennifer's leg is broken. She can't stand up anymore." The rain did not stop. Only the persistent tapping on the tombstone echoed. The expressionless girl stared straight ahead, colorless. "Never mind," Zara sighed. "Don't go after him anymore." She crouched down, looking directly at the person in the photo. "Forget all this, and by the way, wait for your sister. In the next life, I will protect you." Zara didn't know. On the first birthday Julia celebrated when she turned 18, she made a wish. She hoped, in the next life, she could still be Zara's sister.